Welcome to the Unconditionally Worthy Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Adia Gooden, a licensed clinical psychologist who believes deeply that you are worthy unconditionally. Hello, and welcome to episode 25 of the Unconditionally Worthy Podcast. Happy to have you here listening as always. So, I've been thinking a lot about the challenge that I have with patience and my desire for things to get here quickly, happen quickly, be simple, right? And I think it's something that a lot of us experience and struggle with. And I've certainly gotten better with patience, but I notice that it's much easier for me to hold the space for patience and recognize progress when I'm working with clients than it is when I'm thinking about my own life. And specifically for me, I'm thinking about my business, right? So I'm less than a year into business. I'm about, I would say 8 months into working for myself full time. And I notice myself comparing, right? How many followers, how many subscribers, how much money is other people making? Why am I not, making these things, happen so quickly, and sort of questioning the steps that I'm taking. And I tend to be a good student. So if you tell me to do something, I'm probably going to do it if it makes sense to me. And so I've been noticing that. And that has got me thinking about what it really means to do the work, the time it takes, and the problem with quick fixes. I think, as I have entered this world of online courses and online marketing and online businesses and sort of learn about, the process and what it takes to build a business, a lot of strategies and approaches are framed as just do these two things, just do these simple things, and then you're going to make millions, and then you're going to blah, 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 blah. And I think the reality is that some of those strategies are helpful, some of them are effective, but a lot of them are quick fixes that, may not really create lasting change. And so I've been thinking about that with my business. And it also made me think about that related to the work that I guide clients through and that I guide course members through. And I wanted to have a conversation with you, or I wanted to talk with you about what it really means to do the work. Right? And to distinguish between quick fixes and the real work that is going to create lasting change. And so that's what this episode is about today. So I'm going to start by talking about, the challenges with quick fixes, which often look too good to be true, right? But we can fall into them. And then what it really looks like to do the work, right? To do real emotional work that brings about lasting change. There's a lot of problem with quick fixes. And we live in a world where we're sort of conditioned to expect things to come quick, fast, and in a hurry, right? We live in a world where, in the Western hemisphere or in the US, I could get basically any type of fruit or vegetable at any time of the year, right? There's often no sense of seasonality, no sense of, apples are in season in the fall and berries are in season in the summer and this is in season. It's whatever I want, I could get it when I want it. And this world creates the sense that things don't take time, right? That they should be instantaneous. It's microwavable. It's fast food drive-through, right? And then in the world of social media, right, there's this sense that everything should be quick and easy and fun and entertaining, right? And that is what holds people's attention. And you're going to be more popular and you're going to get more support or more followers or more likes if you do something that's quick, easy, fun, digestible, blah, blah, blah. And I think the reality is that while the quick and easy and fun may be useful for parts of our lives, the things that we really want on a deep level, right? Healthy relationships, mental and emotional health, healing, wealth, success, usually take time and consistent effort to build, right? Usually these things are not happening instantaneously. And when we believe that these things should come quickly and they don't, we start thinking that something might be wrong with us. And social media can make it seem like, oh, just follow a couple simple steps, look at an Instagram carousel and look at the reminders, and you should be good. You should be healed. You should be able to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And the reality is that these types of things don't produce lasting change. So I think, we could use an analogy of a quick fix being like eating a bag of chips when you're really hungry for a full meal. So will the bag of chips satiate you a little bit for a little while? Yeah. Will it fill you up and give you the lasting energy and nourishment that you're really wanting and needing? No, it won't. The bag of chips might taste good, right? It might feel like, okay, yes, like I'm getting my hunger under control. But when you really need nourishment, some chips are rarely going to satisfy you. And you're going to be left feeling frustrated and feeling confused about the few moments when you felt good as you ate the chips because they look good and they tasted good. You're going to be confused when that gives way to feeling hungry just 30 minutes later. Now, I really do want to note that I don't think there's anything wrong with eating chips, right? There's nothing wrong with chips. And in fact, chips can be a great snack when you need something to fill in the gaps. When you're rushing between meetings and you got to grab something quick, chips can be a great solution. But it's really important to be clear that chips are not deeply nourishing. And we could say the same thing about quick fixes. Surface level strategies or reminders may hold us over until we have the space to do the real work of growth and healing, but they are not the same. And it's important to know when we're reaching for a quick fix. It's important to know when we're reaching for a bag of chips. It's important to recognize, okay, I'm really hungry. I really need some protein and some vegetables, but I don't have time for that right now. So the best I can do is grab some chips, and that's better than nothing, right? That's important to know so that you know when you're doing the real work versus when you're doing a quick fix. You know when you're eating a real meal versus when you're just eating chips to tide you over. And I think so often we confuse the two. So often we think the quick fix, the bag of chips, is all we need, when it's never all we need. And the other thing is, if we keep eating the chips, we start to expect that the deeper work should be just as easy, just as accessible, just as quick. When the reality is that we know when we have a good meal, a nourishing meal, it usually takes time, energy, effort, commitment. Takes some planning, some grocery shopping, some prepping. Things might need to be stewed or simmered for hours to develop the flavor, right? You got to have different components. It takes time, and it is so worth the effort because it is nourishing on its deep level. So in summary, the problem with quick fixes is that they don't get to the root of the problem. And while they may help us to feel good for a few moments, ultimately, they can leave us feeling confused and like there might be something wrong with us when they don't bring the lasting change we're hoping for. And quick fixes can have a place in our life, but it's important to be clear when we're reaching for a quick fix and manage our expectations accordingly. It's important to be honest that quick fixes aren't doing the real work. They aren't going to create lasting change. They aren't going to nourish and heal us on a deep level because they cannot. And so it's important for us to distinguish that. And I think because we live in this world where quick fixes are promoted as the work or as lasting change, we have to be the ones to clarify, right? I mean, I think most of us, at least in the US, I've seen the commercial, basically it's getting hangry, grab a Snickers, right? And the idea is the Snickers is going to nourish you. Well, the Snickers is a quick fix. And yeah, it might get you through a hangry moment, but it isn't nourishing on a deep level. But the idea promoted by the commercial is that it is. And so we have to distinguish, is this a quick fix? Is this a bag of chips that's going to tide me over, make me feel good for a few moments? Or is this something that is deeply going to nourish me? Is that is going to guide me on my healing journey and path, right? That's what we have to determine. So I encourage you to think about that, right? And especially if you have found yourself feeling frustrated, feeling like, what is wrong with me that I am not making the progress that I thought I'd make? What is wrong with me that I'm not seeing the changes that were promised to me by this solution? To take a step back. And if you really have been adhering to the plan, to the suggestions, to the strategies, consider whether it was a quick fix, whether it needs more time, instead of blaming yourself for something that really may not be your fault, right? It may be that you thought you were buying a meal and you really were buying a bag of chips. And so you have to sort of reevaluate. Okay. So I hope that you're on board with my conceptualization of quick fixes and the problems with quick fixes. Now let's talk about what it really means to do the work. So we have quick fixes on one end of the spectrum, and then doing the work is on the other end. And I think people talk about doing the work, right? They say, oh, you got to do the work, but they don't really tell you what that means. And so I want to get into that today. I want to give you a picture of what it looks like to do the work. And when I talk about doing the work, I'm referring to the work of healing and cultivating mental wellness in your life. And if you've been listening to me for a while, you know that for me, the path to that is embracing your unconditional self-worth. And I don't think that doing the work has to be arduous or painful, but I do think it takes commitment, persistence, and that it is possible that you encounter emotional pain as part of the healing work, right? That is often the case, right? It's like if you fractured your foot and you needed surgery, part of the healing process is that you have to be cut into, you have to have surgery to heal the fracture, right? And with surgery, we don't say, oh my gosh, something's going wrong, right? Which is sort of what we can do with the emotional piece, right? We don't say, oh my gosh, I'm getting cut into, like, what are you doing? Right? Because the surgeon has explained it. We understand the process. We understand why it's happening. And so we understand, okay, it's going to get worse, right? We're going to have a period of time where we have sutures and healing to do, right? And then it's going to get better. And the process is similar with emotional healing. I think, maybe those of us who are healers don't do a good enough job explaining it because people just like, what's going on? Right? But it's like, yeah, we've got to sort of go deep, go into what happened, reprocess that pain, make sense of it. And so, yes, it may feel worse, may feel hard before it starts feeling better, but that is part of the healing process and it's normal. So let's get into what I think are the core factors of doing the work. And this is derived from the work I do with clients, how I lead my course members through their self-worth journeys. And there are 5 core components that I want to talk with you about today. So the first core component is self-awareness. A big part of doing the work is understanding the work you need to do in the first place. And this requires taking the time to reflect on yourself and your experiences and your patterns. This is an essential part of doing the work, because if you don't develop an awareness of yourself, you'll use therapy or other wellness spaces to blame everyone else, your parents, your partners, your friends, society, the job, for the challenges you're experiencing. All right. I've certainly worked with many a client who just wants to spend the time in therapy blaming everyone else for their situation. And I got to tell you, it's very hard to help clients do the work when they're really not interested in it, when they're more interested in blaming other people and being in the role of a victim than they are in looking at themselves. And this isn't to say that there aren't outside factors that influence us, right? If you've experienced trauma, if you've experienced racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, right? Ableism, if you've experienced things that have made your life harder, that is important to acknowledge. So I'm not suggesting that we are unaffected by the world in which we live. And if you really want to do the work, it's essential to be aware of yourself and your own role in your life. Because as long as you're in the space of, I am a victim, this happened to me, that happened to me, this happened to me, you're disempowered. There is nothing you can do about it because you cannot control anyone else. But when you move into a space of, this happened to me and it's my responsibility to think about how I want to move forward with my life, that is where you connect to empowerment. And that is where the real work begins. And so I think part of the challenge is that often what's promoted on social media as, reminders, and I share them too, because I think they're useful. It doesn't always encourage real, honest looking at ourselves. Because in order to truly look at ourselves, we actually need time away from social media. We need time away from consuming content. We need to slow down. We need to journal. We need to reflect. We need to meditate. And you have to create space for that in order to connect to a deeper awareness of yourself, to begin to unearth and then challenge unhelpful patterns. Okay, so the first component of doing the work is self-awareness, cultivating self-awareness. The second component is deciding to do something different. When we're in the space of being a victim, like I just talked about, it feels like there is nothing we can do to change our situation. So it is empowering to decide to do something different. You can't decide to control every element and every person in your life. That's impossible. But you can decide to start treating yourself differently. You can decide to let go of toxic patterns. You can decide to leave toxic relationships. You can decide to stop, coping with your feelings in unhealthy ways. And these decisions can feel hard to make, because you might worry that you'll fail, right? You might worry that if you stop, eating emotionally in response to your feelings, that you might fall off the wagon. You might worry that if you decide to change your substance consumption, change your alcohol use or your marijuana use, that you'll fall off the wagon. You might feel that if you try to stop criticizing yourself, how will you feel if you start criticizing yourself again? And the reality is that it's really important to be willing to have setbacks when you're doing the work. It is not a straight and narrow path, right? I often use the metaphor of hiking up a mountain to encourage my clients when they're feeling like they're not making progress, or they're feeling like they've started to do something again that they had let go of, right? And the reason I use the metaphor of hiking up a mountain is because when you hike up a mountain, you don't go straight up, right? Like it's not a vertical line, right? That would be rock climbing. That's a different thing, right? And even then you have harnesses and things like that, right? But when you hike up a mountain, there's a path that has switchbacks, right? So you go for a while in one direction and then the path switches back and you go a while in the other direction. And this makes the hike manageable. And the reason I use this metaphor, I didn't come up with it, by the way, but I think it's a useful one, so I use it. The reason I use this metaphor is because sometimes when we're in a switchback period of our journey, it can feel like we're not going anywhere, like we're not making progress, like maybe we've just turned around. But if you were to look at your journey from another mountain, you could clearly see that you're making progress, right? If you were to look at another mountain and say, is that person who's in that switchback period, are they making progress up the mountain? You'd say, of course they are, right? This is part of the journey. This is part of the process. And so I think that's really important to remember, right? To not be afraid to make a decision to do something different because you're worried about failure or you're worried about how long it'll take, right? The decision is powerful. The decision is empowering. And, it's going to take time. That's actually the next point. It's going to take time, but making the decision is the first step. Deciding to hike up the mountain is the first step. And that is something that only you can do. No one can make this decision for you. No one can. People can encourage you. People can suggest. People can try to convince you. You are the only one who can make the decision to do the work. So the third component of doing the work is the ongoing commitment. One of the hardest parts about doing the work is showing up for yourself again and again and again, right? This is where quick fixes fall off because quick fixes say, do it once and you're good. The work says, do it once, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. Do it as many times as you need to for the rest of your life. And so ongoing commitment moves the work beyond the level of feel good, quick fix, get it done quickly, into an ongoing lifetime commitment to yourself, to your healing, to your growth, to your well-being. This ongoing commitment says, I'm showing up for myself day in, day out, no matter what. And yes, sometimes you may fall off the wagon. Sometimes you may be in a switchback, like I was just talking about, in your hike up the mountain. And even then you say, I'm still going to show up for myself. So my ongoing commitment to myself and the journey in the work that I do is to respond to myself with compassion and offer myself forgiveness no matter what. If I make a mistake and things aren't going well, I show up in a loving and kind and encouraging way because that's the work. It's saying, hey, you know what, Adia, I'm not leaving you. I am not leaving you. I'm here. No matter what, I am here. And that is a powerful shift for me. It is a powerful way for me to show up for myself. Making a commitment to your healing journey might also look like investing time and money into therapy, into coaching, into a course that guides you in this process, right? Because if you're just relying on cobbling together random Instagram posts, podcasts, I know that this is supportive on your healing journey, and I'm so grateful. This is why I put it out. But we can have a tendency to sort of cobble things together without any structure. And it can be easy to sort of fall off, right? To sort of stop, listen, the book is over. So you're done reading it and you don't pick up another one. And there's really no accountability and you don't really have support in the process. And so if you're really committed to doing the work, engaging some sort of guidance, some sort of support, making a commitment not only of your intention, but also your time, your energy, and your money is huge. It's hugely supportive of doing the work. So I encourage you to think about that, right? If you have found that you've been spending years sort of trying different things, dabbling here, dabbling there, dabbling here, dabbling there, and you haven't really found much progress, one question to ask yourself is whether or not you have invested and made a commitment such that you can receive the guidance and the support and the structure that you really need for your journey, that you really need to do the work, right? Like, unless you're an incredibly experienced hiker, you're not going to find some random incredible mountain. Like, you're not going to climb Mount Everest without a guide, right? Like, no one climbs Mount Everest without a guide, without a team. And why not? Because it's challenging, because there are dangers, and there's not dangers in the healing journey, but you get what I'm saying, because you need support and guidance and coaching along the way when it gets tough. And I think the same is true for our healing journeys. And so I really encourage you to think about, how have you committed time, energy, money? How have you invested in the journey to do the work? What does that look like? And if you haven't, what's been holding you back? And then the last point, the last part of doing the work that I want to mention is recognizing your progress. So this is essential because doing the work is a long game, right? It's a long game. And if you're going on a long journey, you want to have some sort of markers or checkpoints or sense of how far you've come. Because if you feel like you haven't made any progress, it's going to be discouraging and demotivating. It's going to be hard to continue to move forward. And so recognizing your progress, recognizing the changes you've made, the work you've done is so important. And this is a big thing that I do with my clients, right? Because I am bearing witness to their journey and supporting them and guiding them on their journey, I have sort of a bird's eye view of the progress that they are making. And so even if they have a hard time seeing it, and often they do, I can say, remember 6 months ago, you might have done this in response to that. And now this is your response, right? Like, see how that is a mark of progress. And it's always encouraging and affirming. And it's so important. It can be helpful to have a guide and some structure and support to understand your progress, because then you're not just sort of trying out random strategies, but there's some organized, coherent journey and process that you're going through. But regardless, it's really important to take time to reflect. And this is where self-awareness comes back in, right? Because you want to reflect on how you've changed, how you've gotten out of old patterns, how you started shifting things. And it doesn't mean that things need to be perfect. You don't need to be at the end of the journey to mark your progress. You want to recognize, wow, like, I would have gotten into 10 text message arguments a month, and now I'm getting into 3, right? Like, that's progress. Do you know what I mean? And so it's really important to acknowledge your progress, because that gives you fuel and encouragement to continue on the journey. That helps to remind you that your work, your effort, your time, your commitment is worth it. And again, this is another place where having some structure can be incredibly helpful, right? It can be helpful to be following the structure of a course or a program or therapy, so that you're not just out here trying random things and it's hard to track your progress. If you have some structure, it becomes easier. So I hope that this has been incredibly helpful, right? To distinguish between quick fixes, right, which may satiate our hunger momentarily, but really are not going to nourish us deeply. And doing the real work of emotional growth, of healing, of expanding our wellness, of embracing our unconditional self-worth. And I hope that it's got you thinking about how you want to engage in this work and what that might look like for you. If you're interested in getting started in the process of embracing your unconditional self-worth, I have a free ebook, and it's on 4 practices to connect with your unconditional self-worth. I've named these things practices because they take ongoing commitment. And this is a start, right? It's an ebook, so it gets you started thinking. And I also guide people to do this work through my ongoing program. So I recently launched my Date Yourself program, which helps people to release patterns of toxic self-criticism, engage in self-care, to support people in the beginning of their self-worth journeys. And I also guide people through deeper levels of work on their self-worth journeys through my Unconditionally Worthy program, which helps people to forgive themselves, practice self-acceptance, connect with internal wisdom. And I'm incredibly honored for the people who sign up for these programs, get so much out of it. I'm incredibly honored to be able to do the work with people, to guide people through the work, and to really just see the amazing transformations that people have in their lives. It's amazing. So if that's something you're interested in, if you're interested in being guided in this work, my Unconditionally Worthy program will reopen in January, and there's going to be a limited number of spots. So stay tuned. Make sure you're on my email list. If you sign up for the free ebook, which is linked in the show notes, and you can also find it on dradiagooden.com/free, another E-book. So free ebook, you can sign up and you'll get on my email list, and you'll be one of the first to know when I reopen the Unconditionally Worthy program, which really is a powerful journey. And it's an opportunity to be guided in the work and really experience incredible transformations in a structured, supportive, connected community. And so I hope that some of you will consider that, and, stay tuned for when that is available again. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these ideas about quick fixes and the challenges, as well as what it looks like to do the work. So please leave a review. That really helps me and the podcast. It helps other people find the podcast. Also, DM me. Find me on Instagram at Dr. Adia Gooden. DM me. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you find helpful. Let me know if you disagree with anything. I welcome your opinions. As always, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.